Hello folks, this is Margie Roy from 3dcuts.com, and today I'm putting together the tutorial on how to make my lighthouse shadow box. This shadow box is just one of the many different shadow boxes I have designed. They are 3-layered shadow box in a 6.5 by 6.5 inch frame. It is all made out of cardstock, and we use a printed sky background with it. Let's get started. First, cut all of your pieces. You should go to my website at 3dcuts.com for hints on how to cut the paper, what kind of cardstock to use, and any updates that I might have for this tutorial. Be sure to check out the written portion of this tutorial at the address shown on the screen. The shadow box comes with 4 inner shadow boxes. Each one is numbered in the upper left corner. I like to make my shadow boxes 1 layer at a time, doing as much as I can that is flat. The number 1 is the front box, and that's the easiest, so we'll start there. Fold all of the edges on the dotted fold line away from you. The hanger is optional. It can be added or not. I will on this one. I will be using 2 types of adhesive. The first is score tape, and the second is art glitter glue. On the number 1 piece, I will put 2 pieces of score tape on each of the 4 tabs. Peel the score tape from one corner at a time, fold the corner in, and adhere, being sure to stay square. Repeat for all 4 corners. The hanging piece will get a strip of score tape along the edge. It will be installed into the top edge of the number 1 box. Center it in the middle and adhere in place. The number 1 frame is complete. We'll put that to the side and bring in the parts for the number 2 frame. The number 2 frame is the close piece of land and the pine trees. We're going to start with the tallest pine tree. There are 2 pieces, which are the roots of the pine tree. These get glued onto the back side of the pine tree to give it a little more dimension. The black on black will disappear if you don't put this extra layer in to give you the added height. There's 1. This glue that I'm using is the art glitter glue. I have transferred it into a smaller container with a very tiny tip for control in exactly these kinds of locations. And there's the second one. Now when I glue this in place, it will have some relief and still show up in the shadow box. Okay, the next thing to do is to adhere this. It should be positioned so that the tip of the tree can get glued here, the right side of the tree can get glued here, and the roots are down here. I'm going to turn it a little bit to make it a little more dynamic, like the wind is blowing. I'll have to cut that off later. But let's take this and turn it over. Put glue on the back of the roots. Glue on the very tip. And glue on the right side as well. Position this in place. art glitter glue does dry clear, which is a good thing. The second pine tree gets placed in this corner down here. A little bit of glue on the bottom of the trunk and a little bit of glue on the tips of the branches furthest out to the left here. About like so. Then in front of that, I'm going to put another pine bough. These I'm going to curl forward so that they're not on top of that pine tree, but it needed a little more pine in that lower left corner. So I added another layer here. Let's put that on. Keep it inside the dotted fold line here. These I'm going to curl out so that they come forward. Yep. Now over here, I'm going to add the ferns. There were a variety of ferns in the cutting. You may not need them all. These are difficult to cut, so I put extras in there just in case. I think I'm going to cut the long stems off, some of them. And I'm just going to put glue on the stem down near the bottom and maybe the bottom 4 leaves. And in this empty space over here, I am going to put these ferns. The arrangement of the ferns is up to you as the artist. Okay, I have added all of the trees to this layer. I'm now going to turn it over and fold back on the dotted fold lines. And on the front side, I will add a piece of score tape to each of the tabs. Peel the score tape off and again, make square corners. Layer 2 is complete. We can put that to the side and allow it to dry. And now we're going to do layer 3. Layer 3 has a whole bunch of little pieces here. There is the lighthouse piece. There is a land piece with 2 backings. There is a smaller land piece with 2 more backings, and that's where we're going to start. You'll see that these reflect this, and we're going to glue them onto the back in order to again give a little more dimension so that we don't lose the details of the cliffs in the black on black shadow box. So onto the back side of this, we will glue spacer number 1 and spacer number 2. This smaller piece of landscape has the same thing. Turn it over. Spacer number 1 and spacer number 2 both get adhered to the back side. Okay, the rocks here get aligned there and put on the front. The shorelines should match up quite nicely. And this one will again line up with the shoreline there and get put on front of the lighthouse. This gives us layers for the rocky coastline. Then turn layer number 3 over. This piece, which should be cut out of a gray that is slightly lighter than the black, will get glued on the back side of the lighthouse. It's so that the ocean doesn't show through the windows and the door here. I'm going to use this sky background. I printed this on my inkjet printer. I included the sky with the download at 3dcuts.com. You can print it up as well, or you can substitute any sky photograph that you've taken. If you've taken a beautiful sunset over the ocean, use that. What you need to know is you need at least 2.5 inches of sky above the horizon line to use for this particular project. Now, I am going to measure up 2.5 inches here, and that's going to be about the top of this design. I am going to place layer number 3 so that the dotted line is aligned with that. And this is where it will fit on here. I'm going to move this down so that this is aligned with the bottom. And then I'm going to lightly trace the landscape here. This is because I would like to have this piece of water attached to the back side of layer 3. I'm now going to take a pair of scissors and cut along that line. Okay, this piece will get glued onto the back of layer number 3 in this lower portion down here. I can see that the width should be from here to here. It needs to be just inside the dotted fold lines. I'll cut those off. And let's see. Baseline is there. I'll cut that off in my paper cutter. I will save this piece for the top portion. Now this is going to be glued right in back here. I'm going to turn this over and make sure that I can be below this black line the whole way by about a 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch, watching this skinny area over here and be inside the dotted lines. I think I'm a little bit too wide. I'm good on the bottom. So I'm going to cut this just a little narrower because it's impossible to do later. Okay, turn it over, make sure no white is showing. Yeah, that looks good. Now I will put glue along here, down just about 1/8 of an inch below the top, and along the edges here, but especially along the shoreline here, because that's what I like the water to stick to. It looks funny if the shoreline is floating in space. Okay, and let's glue that in place. I'm making sure that no white shows, none of the photo paper shows above this black line. Press. Now, if any of the photo paper shows above the black line, you can take a Sharpie marker and just make that white dark so you don't see it. Okay, that is everything that gets added to layer 3. We'll turn it over and we'll fold on the dotted fold lines, all of the edges back. On this one, there's really not enough room for score tape in the corner, so I use glue dots. And I put a glue dot in each corner of layer 3. Then turn layer 3 over and make nice square corners. Okay, the background is going to go into layer 4. So let's take layer 4, and on this one, all of the dotted lines get folded toward you. It really doesn't make a lot of difference. On layer 4, I will again apply 2 rows of score tape to each of the 4 corners. I will now peel the score tape in each of the corners and make nice square corners for the shadow box. Okay, there's layer 4, and by measuring, I can tell that layer 4 is 6 3/8 inch square. I am now going to take my photograph and measure over 6 3/8. Let me double that, check that measurement. 6 3/8, but I'm going to go a little less than it because it's going to be on the inside. So here is 6 3/8. Let's go back just a little bit, and I'm going to go cut that on my paper cutter. Okay, that's the width dimension there. I've got that right. I'm going to need to decide how far down the horizon line is going to be, and this is clearly too far on this one. Let me take it out of here and hold this in front of it and just start working my way down. As I said, I generally like it at about the 2 1/4 to 2 1/2 mark. There's the 2 1/2 mark. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that. So take my skyline and measure up 2 1/2 inches. Because I made this mistake with this pen line here, I have to make sure that that doesn't show and it's way below it. So I'm okay there. So I'm going to go cut that line on my paper cutter. Okay, this will go into the back. And let's look at this in front of it. I need to make sure that the land will fit, and then the sailboat will get placed in this valley. And I want to make sure there's enough room for everything there. There is, so I will put it together. This land, the larger of the two, will be glued in on the left side, right on the horizon there. There's another little spit of land that can come in from the right, if you'd like, a little bit closer. And I'm going to glue that one there. So let's get some glue on it. A little sloppy with the glue there. Good thing it glues clear. I'm not going to put the sailboat on without this being in front of it, because I will definitely put it in the wrong spot. And for that, I think I'll use tweezers. I'm going to position it so the sailboat is sailing into the scene, like so. Now, a few added details. The little people on the sailboat do not cut out. I lose them every time. So I take a Sharpie and I draw into the sailboat just 2 little figures. Nothing more than lumps. And if you'd like, on layer 3, you can do just some little water lines at the tips of each of the pieces of land. Very light, like so. The final photo layer gets glued into layer 4. So we'll put some glue onto that. Could use score tape for this too. Now take layer 2 and layer 3 and put them together and turn them over. Layer 3 will slide down into layer 2, and we don't want it to do that. We want layer 3 to stay aligned with the back edge of layer 2. I do tape these in place to make sure they don't move around after it's together. So I line up the back edges of 3 and 2, and I put a piece of tape on each of the 4 sides to hold them into position. None of this will show in the final shadow box. Layers 2 and 3 are all assembled. I am going to put a little bit of score tape onto each of the 4 sides of this assembly to hold it in place in the final shadow box. These will go near the front edge so that I can reach them with tweezers to peel them off. Okay, put layers combine 2 and 3 into layer 4, and take some needle nose tweezers and peel off the score tape backing. Make sure these are all the way down in the shadow box and adhere to the outside wall. There we go. Layer 1 will go on top here to the inside of each of the 4 walls of layer 1. Put a piece of score tape, and this time put it toward the back edge. Put layer 1 over layers 2, 3, and 4. It is a tight fit, so do so with care. Press it all the way to the back, flip it over, and again take your tweezers and on each of the 4 sides, pull off the backing of the score tape and press it into place.
And there we are, all done. Who will you give your lighthouse shadow box to? And have you tried any of the other many shadow boxes available at my website? I have been creating cardstock shadow boxes for years. You can make them as well. The cutting files and tutorials for many different themed shadow boxes are available at 3dcuts.com. Just look under the Nature Shadow Box link. Thank you for watching, and happy crafting, everyone!